said unto her, Where hast thou gleaned today? And where wrougest thou? Or where did you get this? Blessed be he that did take knowledge of thee. And she showed her mother-in-law with whom she had wrought, which is an interesting use of words. She showed her with whom she had wrought, and said, The man's name with whom I wrought today is Boaz. Interesting point. I may or may not mention this later, but I'll mention it now. Naomi says, Where? Where did you go? Where have you gleaned today? Where wroughtest thou? Where have you been today? And Ruth's answer was not, I went to this area. I was in this field. She said, I was with somebody. It's a great picture of our relationship with the Lord. People ask, well, where did that happen? Where? How? And we don't answer with how. We answer with who. That Jesus Christ is the one. Okay? She said, the man's name with whom I wrought today is Boaz. And Naomi, with a light in her eye, said unto her daughter-in-law, Blessed be he of the Lord, who hath not left off his kindness to the living and to the dead. And Naomi said unto her, The man is near of kin to us, one of our next kinsmen. And Ruth the Moabitess said, forgive me, it's interesting that throughout this book, it over and over says Ruth the Moabitess. It declares her as a girl, as a woman from Moab, over and over and over. And what we see and what we're going to see is that this person from descendants of evil, from descendants of wickedness, becomes part of the family. And just over and over, she was a Moabite, she was a Moabite, she was an alien, she was an outsider. We who were, as I said the other day, were alienated. We were alienated. She was alienated, and she becomes part of the family. Okay? Verse 21, And Ruth the Moabitess said, He said unto me also, Thou shalt keep fast by my young men until they have ended all my harvest. And Naomi said unto Ruth, her daughter-in-law, It is good, my daughter, that thou go out with his maidens, that they meet thee not in the other field. So she kept fast by the maidens of Boaz to glean unto the end of barley harvest and of wheat harvest, and dwelt with her mother-in-law. I want you to see, number one, Ruth's diligence. Oh, I changed it. And I didn't change it here. Awareness. I typed up my notes and I got to looking at it and I thought, I like the word awareness better than diligence. Diligence fits, but awareness is better. And we'll see it conversely here in just a minute. Ruth's awareness. She gleaned all day long, okay? She came in the morning, she left in the morning, said, I'm going to go, and again we come back to this. She said, I'm going to go and glean ears of corn after him in whose sight I shall find grace. And she goes, and she's obviously, we read, spent time talking about the day she's there. But she gleaned all day long. She was mindful of the fact that she and Naomi only had a certain amount of time. They weren't going to be able to glean. You don't harvest year-round. You only have a certain amount of time to harvest. And so this is why I went with diligence first and forgot to change it on my notes here. She understood I only have a certain amount of time. And I've got to do everything I can in the time that I'm given. And again, we have such a great spiritual application here. We have only a certain amount of time. I think about Gayla's time. She has no more time here. She has no restriction of time anymore. Those that go on to heaven, they have no more real concept even of time. We have a limited amount of time. We're talking about the end times. That it could happen tonight. It could happen before we get out of this building tonight. The Lord could come back. We are limited. We need to work. She winnowed. Got that one. All right. winnowed it before going home. Now, winnow is to separate the chaff from the wheat and barley. Oh. So she got rid of the chaff. She made sure that hull, that husk, around the fruit of the stalk, the wheat, the barley, was gone. She winnowed it. She thrashed it, and so that it would be gone, so that she wouldn't have to carry. This is awareness. This is awareness. She's going to have to climb. We talked about this several weeks ago. More than likely, the fertile area was down in the valley, and so it was likely that Boaz's field was down in the valley. Remember, he came from Bethlehem to the field, and here she goes from the field into the city. She took it up, verse 18, and went into the city. She probably had to go back up the mountain. Now, who in the world would want to carry all of that back up the mountain? I guess people would say, well, I'll get Naomi to help me. I'll get her to help me winnow this, and so I'll tote it all the way up the mountain. But she didn't do that. She was aware that it needed to be done. She had collected enough for the two of them for a week. Now, that doesn't sound like a whole lot, really, to us. But that's when you look at how many loaves a day it would make, it was a lot. And it would take care of them for a week. But the great thing is, she met the one who would take care of them for the rest of their lives. And I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but that's good stuff. All she could do, and this is, again, there's so many spiritual applications and pictures. All she could do was provide for that little bit of time. But she met the one that could take care of them for the rest of their lives. All right? Look at verse 18. Kind of an interesting phrase that at face value doesn't make a lot of sense, but whenever you look at what's already happened. And she brought forth and gave to her, to Naomi, that she had reserved after she was sufficed. What in the world does that mean? Well, if you go back to verse 14, Boaz said unto her, at mealtime, come thou hither, eat of the bread, dip thy morsel in the vinegar. And she sat beside the reapers, and he reached her parched corn, and she did eat, and was sufficed, and left. And so she brought Naomi the leftovers from supper. Awareness. Diligence, yeah, was a good word, but I think awareness works better, because she was aware of the need. She was aware of taking care of the need, and she was aware that sitting at Boaz's table, she thought, Naomi probably hadn't eaten all day long. I'll eat enough. I'll eat enough to suffice, but I want to make sure I take Naomi some to eat. What a caring, loving woman. To think of her mother-in-law in this way, who she didn't see as a mother-in-law, she saw her as her mother. To think of her and to be aware that she's at home and, she's had a hard time lately, and, I'll take her some of the corn. I'll take her some of the meal for tonight. And she takes it to her. What a great woman. Number 2, Naomi's delight. I don't know what Naomi's expectation was of Ruth. Y'all know me. I use my imagination. I kind of read into things sometimes. I kind of try to put some personality and some effect to what I'm reading. And I imagine Ruth coming in, and she's got a big bag, if you will. I don't know what else, to sack of barley and wheat and corn. And when she comes in, I don't think Naomi was sitting in a rocking chair. But I imagine her sitting in there somewhere. Maybe she was cleaning up something, but probably just sitting on one of the cots that was in it wasn't a house like we have. It was just a room. It was just a structure. And when she comes in and the candles burning or the torches burning, whatever it is, and she walks in the door and she sees what she has. I imagine her getting up. And she looks. And she said to her, "Where did you glean today?" This was not the gleaning of someone who had gone to the corner of the fields with everybody else. Those that went to the corner of the fields and they were just getting what everybody else was getting were getting just handfuls, just little bits. They were trying to find stuff that was on the ground, and there was nowhere near that amount. And when Ruth left that morning, Naomi's thinking, well, at least maybe she'll get enough for tomorrow. Maybe we can make a cake, if you will, tonight, some rolls tonight. Maybe we can have enough for tonight, and she can go tomorrow and get some more for another night. Maybe we'll have. And she comes in. Ruth comes in, and Naomi stands up. She saw what Ruth had gleaned, and I believe this. It's not spelled out in the scriptures, but I truly believe this, that she asked about the day's harvest with great excitement. I imagine Ruth coming in with a bag, a sack that would sling over her shoulder, that you see him spreading seed in or out of and things like that. And I imagine her standing up, and if this is Ruth, I imagine her standing up and coming over and going, Where did you glean today? She can't believe the amount of wheat and barley that she's got. She says, where did you glean? And where did you work? Where did you get all of this? She's excited. She cannot believe that Ruth has enough food for days. It's exciting to her. And she blesses. Remember, I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but remember, when she left, she was sweetness. When she came back, she was sorrow. She said, "Call me Mara." When she came back to Bethlehem, they said, "Oh, Naomi, it's good to see you." She said, No. Don't call me sweetness anymore. God is sweet. Call me sorrow. Call me Mara. Mara just kind of sounds like a sorrow name, doesn't it? Call me Mara. The Lord hath dealt, can't remember the word, bitterly. Hath dealt bitterly with me. She was, can we say, a little angry at God? I mean, we've all known people like this. Oh, don't talk to me about church stuff. God abandoned me. God left me. God did this to me, and God did that to me. I don't want to talk about God. Don't talk to me about church and all that. She says, I don't want to talk about it. Don't call me God is sweet. Call me God is sorrow. But here, a change is coming. That's the name of the lesson tonight. A change is coming. She says, where hast thou gleaned today? And where wroughtest? Where'd you get this? Blessed be he that did take knowledge of thee. The word blessed has to do with Jehovah, not just let him be happy. She blesses him by the name of Jehovah. It's not there, but we can infer that, I believe. And she commends Ruth. And it says, blessed be he that did take knowledge of thee. What she's saying is that there is, blessed is he who looked at you the way you deserve to be looked at, who noticed you, who took note of you, not just because she was pretty, but whenever Boaz found out who it was, what did he say to her? Verse 11, Boaz said unto her, it hath fully been showed me all that thou hast done unto thy mother-in-law since the death of thine husband, and now thou hast left thy father and thy mother in the land of thy nativity, and art come to a people which knewest not heretofore. The Lord recompense thy work, and a full reward be given thee of the Lord God of Israel, under whose wings thou art come to trust. It wasn't just that she was a pretty girl. When Boaz found out who she was, he connected it. Said, And she commends Ruth on that. Number 3, we had Ruth's awareness. Now we have Ruth's unawareness. Ruth is a good person. She's a virtuous woman. She saw the need. Ruth was only doing what was right. We commend her. I think we understand the lazy side of people. We understand the laziness of mankind, of many people. And for her to have been gone all day and come back with this sack full, she commends her. But Ruth was only doing what was right. She was only doing what she saw as necessary to be done. Now, she met Boaz. She still did not know who Boaz was. She did not know what Boaz could do for her. You know, whenever she says, "Yeah, Naomi says, "Where did you glean? Where wroughtest thou this?" And she said, "Well, I went to this guy, a field of a man named Boaz." And it's such a well-written book. It's such a beautiful love story. It's got some twists and turns to it. And she doesn't just say, it was Boaz. There's a little bit of a build-up to it. Oh, she said, the man whose field I wrought today is Boaz. Now, we'll get to this again in a minute, but Naomi's already had a little lighter step. She's got a little, she's walking a little lighter because of the amount. And then she hears the word Boaz. The name Boaz. Now, that doesn't mean anything to Ruth. To Ruth, he was a kind man that took care of her and has been overly gracious to her. She had been uniquely acquainted with Boaz. And she didn't know the relational potential of Boaz. I want you to think about us. We are each uniquely, before we get saved, in a lot of ways we're uniquely acquainted with the Lord. We hear the preaching of the Word. We maybe have, I think about my Papa Brock, who was reading the book of John, chapter 3, when he got saved. He was uniquely acquainted. Each of us are uniquely acquainted. But before we meet Christ, we don't even understand the potential of the relationship with Him. And she was in the same boat. She didn't understand that. But, let her see, Boaz was aware of his relational potential. Ruth is just gleaning in his field. Ruth is just trying to take care of her and Naomi. She's just doing what she knows is right, taking care of things, and she meets a man in whose eyes she finds grace. Unaware of what he could do for her. But Boaz knows. See, I'm a man. Okay? And I understand Boaz. Boaz sees Ruth. She's a pretty woman. He doesn't know who she is yet, but she's pretty. And he says, she's very nice looking. Who is this pretty girl? Oh, it's Ruth. It's that Moabitess girl from the land of Moab that came home with Naomi. And he says, I can help there. She's pretty, and there's an allowance in the law for me to help here. So I think I can speak for the men here. I can speak for this man. The wheels are turning. I mean, as soon as he finds out who she is, the wheels are turning. How can I make this work? He starts putting 2 and 2 together and comes up with 4, and he's working it out. Boaz knew the relational potential. She was unaware of it. But Boaz knew exactly what he could do for her. We may not ever understand this side of heaven, the relational potential that we have with Jesus Christ. I'm not talking about just, hey, get out of hell free and go to heaven. I'm talking about the things that he offers to us on a daily basis that we are just oblivious to. Boaz was aware of it. He was aware that he could provide protection. I don't know how much she understood. Maybe she understood the protection he could offer. He said, hey, you glean in this field, and my guys are going to watch out for you. And we read in the verses that he said, I've told my men not to touch you, to leave you alone. But that's not the extent of it. We looked at that. That's not the extent of it. The extent was not only don't touch her, watch over her. That's the protection he could offer. He could offer provision. I mean, we could talk about the provision of food, and that's obviously there. But Boaz could provide love. Boaz could provide comfort. He could provide shelter. He could provide, as he has already, kindness. He's already provided grace. He can provide all of these things. Number 3, he provided acceptance. I really believe that the majority of Bethlehem felt the way that I think, and I'm pretty sure we can infer from the passage when he says, don't reproach her. Don't give her a hard time. I think whenever we read, oh, it's that Moabitess woman, I think there is that. I think that there is that attitude. She's the Moabitess girl from Moab. You got to make sure, tell him that she's Moabite, that she's no good and everything. And then he says, reproach her not. With him, she's accepted. Whether the whole town will accept her yet is beside the point right now. But with the kinsman redeemer, she's accepted. She's from the land of Moab, from the land of wickedness, from the land of ungodliness. But with the Redeemer, she finds acceptance. Y'all see the picture? I mean, here we are. Here we are, as God says, at enmity with him. Sons of the devil, sons of Belial. And with the Redeemer, we're accepted. It's a beautiful thing. Number 4, lastly, Naomi's renewed hope. And as I've mentioned, Naomi had gone from God is sweet to Mara. God is sorrow, or it's sorrow, but basically God is sorrow. Call me Mara because I am sorrowful. Look at verse 20 though. And Naomi said unto her daughter-in-law, blessed be he of the Lord. She doesn't just say, blessed be he. Although that carries with it the connotation, as we looked at earlier, of being blessed of Jehovah. She still, I believe this, she still, although she says, blessed be he, she couldn't really bring herself to say Jehovah yet. But now, verse 2, she said, I'm going to go and find someone who's in whose sight I find grace. And she comes back after finding the one in whose sight she finds grace. And she's got a sack full. And Naomi's excited enough to say, blessed be he, in whose sight you found acceptance. Now she says, blessed be he of the Lord. She goes a little further. She's starting to see a change. A change is coming. She blesses by Jehovah's name. And she blesses the Lord. Blessed be he of the Lord, who hath not left off his kindness to the living and the dead. She sees the Lord now again as kind, as loving, as giving, as compassionate. There's discussion about the way this verse is structured in the English language and really in the Hebrew language. Because it says, blessed be he of the Lord. And then you have a phrase that further defines it, describes, who hath not left his kindness to the living and to the dead. Well, is it talking about Boaz or is it talking about Lord? Who hath not left off his kindness to the living and dead? Well, Boaz has proven his kindness. Boaz was kind to her. But as of yet, Boaz has not been kind. How can Boaz be kind to the dead? We'll see that he does fulfill that, but he's not kind to the dead right here. It has to be of the Lord. And so her mindset is beginning to change. When she says, blessed be the Lord, or blessed be he of the Lord, who hath shown kindness to the living and the dead, his kindness is expressed toward Naomi and Ruth. Naomi believed, as I do, that the Lord was leading Ruth. That morning when she says, all right, I'm going to go, and I'm just going to go find a field and somebody's eyes that I find grace in, and I'll glean there. And the Lord said, okay, well, let me show you where to go. If you'll just follow me. And I think Naomi is starting to see that the Lord's hand is in this. So he is kind. His kindness is expressed toward Naomi and Ruth. But not only that, his kindness is expressed toward Elimelech. How is it expressed toward Elimelech? Naomi's understanding this. Naomi is seeing the potential. She says, he's a kinsman. He is the word is Goel. And we'll get to that in just a minute. The word is Goel, and it means redeemer. And she says, he is a redeemer. And she begins to get really excited about this. She says, oh, he can redeem. He can redeem us as the living, and he can give Elimelech a grandson. Now, it's not Elimelech's true grandson. But Naomi views Ruth so much so as a daughter that she feels that this is a continuation of Elimelech's name. Letter D. She shares the good news of the kinsman. Now, Ruth is unaware. Ruth doesn't have any idea who this guy is. But Naomi in verse 20 says under her daughter-in-law, blessed be he of the Lord who hath not left off his kindness to the living and to the dead. And you can imagine Ruth standing there when she says, hath not left off his kindness to the living and the dead. Ruth just kind of says, what are you talking about? What do you mean to the living and to the dead? She goes on. And Naomi said to her, the man is near of kin to us, one of our next kinsmen. He's one of our next redeemers. And she gives the good news of the kinsman. The Hebrew word is Goel. Goel means redeemer. Although Ruth had been acquainted with Boaz, it was not until the one who knew who Boaz was shared the truth with her. So here's the picture. She knows Boaz. She's met Boaz. She's seen the kindness of Boaz. She's willing to admit that Boaz is a good man. But it wasn't until somebody who knew exactly who Boaz was, the kinsman, the redeemer, said, hey, let me tell you what can happen. Let me share with you about your redeemer. You getting the picture? if Naomi had just said, you know what, I don't want to impose. I don't want to assume anything, and I don't want to, push anything on her. Although I know what this man could do for her and for us, but I just don't want to be offensive. If she would have never said anything, I don't know how the story would have ended. But because she shares the good news of the Redeemer, we have a great story of restoration. And she encourages Ruth to obey the direction of Boaz. Verse 22, and Naomi said unto Ruth, her daughter-in-law, it is good, my daughter, that thou go out with his maidens, and that they meet thee not in any other field. So she kept fast by the maidens of Boaz, to glean unto thee of barley and harvest, and of wheat harvest, and dwelt with her mother-in-law. She encourages her to obey the direction of Boaz. Why did she encourage her to obey the direction of Boaz? Right here, to receive the protection he offered. She was going to be there in his field with the men that know, watch out for her, look out after her, take care of her, and to enjoy the provision. So she went back. She obeyed. She did exactly what... Let me go back to this real quick. She did exactly what the one who was in charge told her to do. It is good, my daughter, that thou go out with his maidens, and that they meet thee not in any other field. If she went to another field, was somebody going to hurt her? Probably not. But if she went into another field, although she could do what she wanted to do, if she went into another field, did she fall under the protection of Boaz? No, she wasn't going to find the protection of Boaz in the other fields. Was she going to find the provision that Boaz could offer in any other field? Nope. It's a great picture of salvation. Do exactly what the Redeemer says, and you will be taken care of. What if Ruth had said, but you know what, I don't want to, I don't want to seem a certain way, and I really feel like there's other fields that have more grain or more rice or more barley or more wheat or more corn or whatever it is. I feel like I passed a few other fields and they looked pretty good. I passed by the field of baptism and it looked pretty good. I passed by the field of the Ten Commandments and it looked pretty good. I passed by the field of joining the church and man, that sounded really good. And although baptism, church attendance, keep the Ten Commandments are all good things, that's not where you find salvation. That's not where you find redemption. You find redemption where the Redeemer says to go. And Naomi says, hey, I know there's a lot of fields out there. I know there's a lot of things that look really good, but you're not going to find it in another field. You can look. You can go look in other fields, that field, this field, whatever it is, but you're not going to find what the Redeemer has to offer. Lord, I thank you that you are our kinsman Redeemer. Wow. Lord, you bring us such hope. You're so good to us. Lord, may we share the message of the Redeemer with those around us. In Jesus' name, amen.